Hey friends, I'm your host, Erin Port, and welcome to the Simple Purposeful Living Podcast. Life can be overwhelming and busy, so once a week, I invite you to join me, and together we will make simple tweaks to uncomplicate the hard parts of our life so we can spend more time doing what we love. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Simple Purposeful Living Podcast. If you follow me on Instagram, you know I said this week we were going to talk about birthdays because today is my 42nd birthday. But I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that I spend a lot of time in prayer and processing what this community needs in a particular season. And I put the whole podcast together. I did the outline. I wrote all my notes, and I just did not feel settled about it. And so I scrapped it, and we'll come back to that. I think that is going to be a great podcast for someday. But for right now, I thought I'd share with you some of the things we are dealing with going back to school. And my hunch is that we are not the only ones, right? I don't know about you, but we've been navigating all the feelings as it relates to back to school. There's the joy that we got the teacher that we wanted, but then there's the disappointment that there's no friends in my class. And then there's the fear and the stress and the anxiety of who am I going to sit by on the first day of school at lunch? And I don't know about you, but I still have the dream where I can't get my locker combination to work and my locker open, right? Like that is a real feeling and a real dream I still have. There's just a lot of emotion tied up in going back to school. And while I shared some reminders a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, I kind of wanted to circle back around and share some of the tweaks that I've made over the years from being a first grade teacher and now a mom to a 16, 14, 10, and 8-year-old of some of the things that we're doing that I thought might help you as you navigate this back to school season. So I'm going to share with you 8 tiny tweaks to help kids and you flex your fear muscle as we head back to school. I'm going to start with a little reminder for myself and for you. I hate watching my kids go through hard things. I hate it. It is like literally an out-of-body experience. It is our knee-jerk reaction as moms and parents to want to take that pain away from our kids, right? It is hard, but I am the woman I am today for the hard things I have gone through in my life. I moved every 2 years growing up. I had to be the new kid. I didn't have a choice, right? Those were hard things, but I was also the kid that was hanging on my mom's leg at the first day of kindergarten, screaming bloody murder, not wanting to go into kindergarten. And now I speak to strangers and I run a podcast. And because of flexing my fear muscle all those times, all those years, I am who I am today. And so I remind myself that these hard moments that our kids are going to face is going to help them flex their fear muscle, which is going to grow stronger, help them to be more resilient, strong, brave, and it's going to prove fruitful for them in their lives. So my job is not to help them diminish it or diminish their feelings or trying to take it all away from them. But my job as a mom and as a caregiver is to help them navigate it well. And that's my prayer. That's been my prayer all season. Like, God, help me to have the wisdom to know what to say, what to ask, to create the space that they need to help them navigate this well so that they can learn from these experiences, right? And also not diminish them, right? Because sometimes we just want to say, that's not a big deal, right? Like, who cares who you sit by at lunch, right? Like we're adults now. We have bigger problems, debt and finances and parental stress and marital stress and family stress, right? Like those things feel big to us, but what our kids are experiencing is big to them. And I don't know about you, but it's kind of like when somebody says, calm down. Like that's never worked in the history of calming me down. And saying you're fine to your kids is not really going to help them navigate it well. So what can we do instead? Well, I want to first introduce you to the worry monster. And I have to say right outright, this is not my idea. I heard about this years ago on the Emily Lay Simplified podcast with Sissy Goff. And if you aren't following the Raising Boys and Girls podcast, I highly recommend it. Sissy Goff is great at sharing practical ideas for helping our kids navigate their emotions and feelings. But she talks about the worry monster. And this worry monster shows up and tells you, you can't do this. This is too scary. And it wants you to go back and to hide, right? And that's what anxiety and fear does in us, right? When we approach something where we're going to have to step out of our comfort zone or we're going to have to fear, it is a natural neurological response to run the other way, right? It's because in the olden days, when we saw a bear, our body needed to run the other way for safety. But now our worry monsters and our fears generally aren't going to harm our health or our safety. And sometimes it's loud and sometimes it's a whisper, but it always tries to convince you to avoid the hard thing. And here's the tricky monster. You cannot beat, or here's the tricky part. You cannot beat the worry monster by hiding from it. Every time you do, that worry monster gets bigger and bigger and bigger and says, I told you so. You couldn't do it. I told you so, right? So, how do we combat the worry monster? We flex our fear muscle. And this part comes, I did coin this myself because, or I've shared this with my kids because I tell them every time we flex our muscle, just like when we're in a gym, we get stronger. And so every time we flex our fear muscle, we get a little stronger, we get a little braver. And here's the great news for our kids. The more we let them flex their fear muscle when they're young in age appropriate ways, the more they're going to be able to do that as a tween and as a teen and as adult. And they're going to be braver for the experience. So, how do we help them flex their fear muscle, navigate this season, all of their emotions as we head back to school? All right, I'm glad you asked. I'm going to share 8 tiny tweaks. Okay, number 1, create opportunities for side by side conversations. Okay, there's a couple of things there that are really important. Okay, so last weekend I was having a conversation with a child. The emotion that stemmed from this conversation was unexpected, right? Like immediate tears. And I was like, what is going on? There's clearly been something sitting below the surface. So I stepped back and I shared this analogy with my child. I gave them something heavy. In this case, I had my cell phone sitting there. So I gave them my cell phone and I put it in their hand and I said, okay, hold this cell phone. And then I put my hand under their hand and I said, does it feel lighter? And they said, I don't know. And then I took my hand out really fast from under them and their hand dropped. And I said, see how much heavier it is to carry our emotions by ourselves? That's why it's important to share our emotions with people that we care about, because no longer are emotions as heavy when we bring them to the light and we share them with others. The burden feels lighter. And that was a really important analogy for them because I wanted them to know no matter what they're feeling or what their emotion is, I want them to be able to bring it to me. And oftentimes we can tell with our kids by I just know when my kids are kind of like trying to hold back, right? Like you can kind of see their face contorting, maybe their eyes are getting a little glistened, maybe they get a little quiet, maybe they even get a little angry because we know anger is a secondary emotion to anxiety. So creating opportunities for side by side conversations. Now, in this moment with this child, I immediately got next to them. We were face to face. But being face to face feels more pressure, like you're being interrogated. So what I like to do is I like to just like sit next to them, maybe put my arm around them, maybe we're in the car, maybe we're laying side by side in bed. But this gives them an openness, right? Like I'm not staring at them. They can kind of just be free to think. Um, it might be, cooking together, it might be folding laundry, but those side by side moments can be when the worry monster's voice feels softer. It's easier to say what's on your mind when no one's staring at you. Okay. And so after this conversation with this child, where I was like, okay, clearly there's been something going on and kind of got to the root of it. And we'll kind of talk about that in the next couple of tweaks. Something that I decided to tweak in this season is giving more space for side by side conversations in my everyday. So, point in case, my husband does the bedtime routine. I'm home with them after school. I get a lot more time with them during the day. And so it's always been, we kind of transitioned to this a couple of years ago where my husband gets that time to put them to bed. And they love it. My kids love it. They're doing all the things. I think they get all hyped back up. But I decided with this particular child, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to sit with them and I'm just going to lay with them in bed for a little bit. And some nights they probably won't say anything, but some nights they might. And I just want to give them a little bit of space, a little bit of time to have those conversations with me. So if you have a kid who maybe is feeling a certain way, or you can tell maybe something's going on, ask yourself, is there a time during your day where you can be intentional about creating space for side by side conversations? I think it's really important just to give that space, even anticipating maybe there isn't anything going on, but just even anticipating and saying there might be. I just want to create this routine or this habit of just chatting together. So when the time in the day comes, I am available to them to have those conversations, side by side conversations. Tiny tweak number one. Okay, tiny tweak number two, normalize that new seasons can bring anxiety. A couple of weeks ago, I was sharing something with my counselor, and she said, Erin, you realize people that don't suffer from anxiety, people that just they don't have an anxiety disorder, they feel anxiety. And you would have thought that that was just known to me, right? Like, oh, everybody feels anxiety sometimes. But it was liberating because I realized I wasn't alone. It was normal. Certain things in life, like going back to school, bring anxiety out in everyone. Transitions make people nervous because of so much unknown. And allowing our kids to know that, naming that, removes shame. It helps them to know that they're not alone. And I even saying, like, feeling nervous about going back to school is normal. You're not alone. Now, I said in the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I always used to get scared about saying that because I didn't want to like place an emotion on my kid if they're not feeling it. But remember, as my counselor said, our kids will correct the emotions. Like even this morning, Quincy was upset about something, and I said, "Are you upset about this?" And he was like, "No." He corrected my question to him. So, uh, but giving them the space to feel nervous, even with little kids, one of my favorite things to do when I was a first grade teacher on the first day of school was I read books to them about going back to school. First Day Jitters. It's such a cute book, by the way, First Day Jitters. I will link it in the show notes, but it's about this person. You think it's a kid that's going back to school and they're super nervous and they don't want to go back to school. And then it turns out it's the teacher, right? It's the teacher that was super nervous to go back to school. And the kids are like, oh my goodness, right? It is helpful for kids to know that we are human and we feel nervous sometimes. Now, I'm going to get to that in a minute. So, sharing with them maybe when you were a kid, like I tell my kids, like I was super nervous to go to kindergarten. I cried on my mom's leg. Like I was nervous too. Helping our kids to know that other people are nervous is important. And then reading books about it really helps, especially younger kids, be able to see that they're not alone. And I also love the book Wemberly Worried. It's another really cute book as well about being able to say, like, hey, being nervous is normal. Okay, so normalize that new seasons can bring anxiety. Number two. Number three, ask lots of questions instead of giving all the answers. Okay, so when I was an instructional coach with teaching, one of the things they said to me that was huge mindset shift for me that carried over into my teaching and now my parenting is that when people can believe that they've made the decision to change themselves, they are more likely to follow through. So it's very easy for us to say, this is what you should do. It's easier. But what's more powerful and what is going to promote more change for our kids and others is to ask them a question and allow them to find the answer or the solution, right? So when I say to you, like, what is the tiny tweak that you need in your morning routine? And then you kind of ponder it and you think about it and you're like, well, maybe this. Well, why do you think that? And you can ask them another question. This is leading them to their own solution, and ultimately, it's going to help them with the buy-in and the follow-through. It's the same with your kids. Like, rather than saying, like, well, you could be braver tomorrow by doing X, Y, and Z, maybe you say, like, what's a way you think that maybe you could take a step in bravery tomorrow? Or what's one step that teeny tiny little step that would maybe make you flex your fear muscle a little bit? And if they aren't coming up with it, maybe you could give some examples, right? Like sometimes we go from open-ended to multiple choice. Last resort is true or false, right? Like open-ended answers helps them to kind of process what they're doing, right? That's what we did in teaching. And then if it was too much, we'd give them multiple choices to kind of help them and along like, well, you could do this or this or this or this. Would any of those work? Sometimes kids will say, no, and they'll give you another answer. But asking lots of questions helps them to process their emotions. And every time they come up with their own idea, it's adding another rep to their fear muscle workout, right? Like they feel empowered, like they have a say in that change. Okay. Number four, use structure for predictability. Okay, so when I was a first grade teacher, the first 6 weeks of first grade, we called it like boot camp. And not in a bad way, but literally every single day we did the same thing in the same order. And it brought comfortability, it brought independence, and it brought predictability because unknown makes for anxiety, right? Like when we don't know what to expect, we feel anxious, right? But when we know what to expect, we can do the next thing, right? And it's the same at home. If we can give our kids structure as they head back to school, this is when bedtime is. This is when you wake up in the morning. This is what you do when you wake up. This is what you do after you wake up. This is what you do after breakfast. That really helps them to feel less anxious. Like when you get home from school, mom will be standing on the sidewalk. And after mom stands on the sidewalk with you, we're going to go in and we're going to unload your backpack. And then we're going to go get a snack. And we're going to do that tomorrow. And we're going to do it the next day. And all of that predictability just really helps kids. So, my suggestion to you is don't go hog wild because remember, we want to keep it simple so that we can replicate it. So, what I try to do with my kids is same bedtime routine. Dad texts you in, you go to bed at this time. When you get up in the morning, this is what you do. So, my kids, when they get up in the morning, they come down, they normally snuggle with me, and then they start their morning routine. They get dressed, they brush their teeth. Yes, we brush our teeth before breakfast. It works, it gets done. Whatever schedule works for you is the right schedule. They come down, they do their hair, they get their shoes on. Yes, we put our shoes on before breakfast because remember, if you listen to my podcast for a while, you know that the shoes are an issue. They put their shoes on and then we make lunches and have breakfast. Same schedule every morning. Are they going to get it out of the gate? No. But over time, that predictability helps them not only feel less anxious, it helps them know what to expect. It's also going to provide less reminders for you as well. So when the worry monster whispers, everything is unknown, structure helps them to feel in control and know what's next. So even having a visual chart, if your kid's a visual learner, like this is what you do when you get up in the morning, and then this is what you do. Again, keep it simple so that you can replicate it over and over again. Okay, number five. Add comfort anchors and affirmations. Okay, tangible reminders that you're there with them. Okay, so we have happy notes in our product line. If you don't know and you're new to Simple Purposeful Living, we have an entire product line complete with mostly paper products from the brain dump notepad to the weekly planner to goal setting notepads and gratitude journals. But we have a product called the Happy Notes. And I made these happy notes for situations like this, where we just need to provide them a comfort, a reminder that mom is there. Mom is there. Like they aren't doing this alone, right? I think so often when I think about when I have to do new things, right? When I was writing my book, when I was starting the podcast, when I was starting Simple Purpose Living, anytime I started something new that was scary and unknown, what I needed most was extra affirmation and encouragement. Our kids are no different. When we're asking them to flex their fear muscle, when we're asking them to be brave and go back to school, we need to be extra intentional about sharing with them how proud of them we are, how much we see their effort, how much we see them flexing their fear muscle, their bravery, all of those sorts of things, right? Like the more that they know we see them trying and their effort, the more that they're going to be able to flex that fear muscle. It's just like when we get in the gym. I was in the gym this morning and I was tired, right? I was in like rep number 8 and she's like, "You have 4 more, but you can do it." Man, I was like, yes, I can. Yes, I can because of that encouragement. And we can offer that same encouragement to our kids. So whether that's reading, oh my goodness, I'm blanking. What's the book I wanted to share with you? The Giving. Oh my goodness. It's the little raccoon. The oh my goodness. My goodness gracious. I cannot think of it. I'll put it in the show notes. I think it's called the helping hand, but you put a little heart on their hand. The little mama raccoon says, when you miss me, you can look at that hand on your heart or that heart on your hand and you can say, I know my mama's with me, right? Or you put a happy note in their lunchbox, like you've made it halfway through the day. I am so proud of you for flexing your fear muscle. Or you put it in your kids' agenda. My assistant, Carrie, last year, she had a child who was feeling a little extra anxious about going back to school. So every night after her child went to bed, she left a little note on their nightstand so that it would be the first thing they saw in the morning was a little affirmation, a reminder that their mom believed in them. I just love that. And I actually have some affirmations already written out in a printable that you can get free. So I'm going to put that in the show notes as well, that you could just copy. That our kids need to hear these things. I'm proud of you. I love you. You are brave. You are strong, right? All of those affirmations that they need in this new season. Think of it as a little shield against the worry monster. Okay. Number 6, practice and role play new situations. Okay, oftentimes we forget that a lot of the skills we need in life are learned. When we play a sport, we never start with the game. We never just like go into a game without practice. And it's the same with anything in life. We have to practice before we become proficient. And that even means role playing and practicing with your kids. So if your kids are nervous about who they're going to sit with at lunch on the first day of school, role play it with them. Like, hey, let's think about like what would that look like to ask a friend if they wanted to sit next to you at lunch, and you can role play it with them, and then they will feel more comfortable going into that situation. Or like maybe on the playground, like, hey, do you want to play with me on the monkey bars, and having them be very specific to something that they enjoy doing that they can ask a friend to do, and practicing that, asking for help, finding a seat, uh, that rehearsal shrinks uncertainty because now they kind of know what they can say, what to expect. Role play is like a fear muscle strength training. You're building the moves before game day. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but even just like we've done this with our kids, like and how to apologize, or how to say thank you, or all of those things that they just need to get practice at so that they become proficient in those things. Okay, so practicing and role playing new situations, that might be helpful. Number 7, set the tone and celebrate fear milestones. Okay, I remember when Solon went to kindergarten, and I want to remind you, I was a teacher for years before that, but I remember we went to back to school night. It was just for parents. He was my first one going off to school, and she said, can I just ask you for a favor? Don't let them see you cry. And I know as a teacher why she said that, and I instantly got offended. I was like, but he's my baby, and if I want to cry, I will. She said, because I need you to let them know how brave and strong they are, and then you can cry when you leave the classroom because we set the tone. When I told you to share past experiences, talk with your kids. Like I felt that way when I was a kid, right? That's a past experience that you overcame. It's a success story, and that success story emboldens them. Like, okay, she could do it. I can do it, right? Those success stories help us to feel emboldened. Present emotions that we are feeling can burden our children further, and we don't want to add to their stress, right? So we set the tone. So if you're feeling anxious, don't say, I'm feeling anxious too. Hold that in, or talk to your spouse or talk to your friends, but set the tone for your kids that says, like, I am so proud of you. I believe in you, right? Like we set the tone for that, and then celebrate fear milestones. Now, I have one kid who has an extra hard time flexing their fear muscle. Sometimes it's personality, right? Like I have some kids who just are like their fear muscle is pretty strong already. They're just like flexing it left and right. And then I have one who is very resistant. They like their comfort zone, right? Like a lot of us. And so it takes a little more coaching as a parent to help them flex their fear muscle. And so celebrating that, maybe even, going out for ice cream, or, even just a verbal, like, I see you flexing that fear muscle, helps them to see that they did, in fact, flex that fear muscle, It gives them evidence that they are brave and that they are strong and they can do hard things. And that worry monster starts to shrink. So not only do we want to set the tone, we also want to celebrate those milestones and help them to know how brave and strong they are as they head back to school, right? We're acknowledging, but we're also celebrating. Okay, and number 8, we're rounding the finish line. Communicate empowerment. It kind of goes hand in hand with number 7, but it leaves them with the belief that they do have the capacity to be brave. And if you're a Christian, we oftentimes tell our kids, like, you have God on your side. You have the power of the Holy Spirit on your behalf. Like, you do not walk in to this environment by yourselves. And oftentimes we'll pray with our kids and we'll talk to our kids about that, that they can do hard things with Jesus. Like, you can do hard things. He's given you all that you need to be able to walk through this hard thing. And we are here with you, right? When they hear you believe in them, it's like spotting them in that next fear muscle lift. Like I said, it's like going back to that coach of like saying, like, you've got this. I know that you can do this. I'm not going to leave you by yourself. I know that you have what it takes, right? Like, my coach on the first day didn't have me lift 50-pound dumbbells, right? She had me lift 20. She knew I was capable, and then she put more on me, right? Like, we know that with our kids, we know what they're capable of, and we can empower them with that. So I hope that that encourages you. Here's the thing. This isn't just a random list. The order matters because it mirrors how resilience is built. And ultimately, as a mom, my heart's desire is that I'm not just raising kids, but I'm raising future adults. I want them, as they walk through hard things, to be able to know how to navigate them, to not shrink back because the worry monster is so big that it tells them that they can't do it. Because, someday when they're an adult, I won't be right next to them. But right now I have the privilege of holding their hand. So we start with those side by side conversation opportunities, creating space for that, because that creates safety. They know that we are a safe place, that we can bring their burdens to us and that we can hold them together, and it feels lighter. Then the next step is we normalize anxiety so that they know what they're feeling isn't because they're broken. It doesn't mean that they're weird. It's okay to feel nervous. We all feel nervous. And that's where you can share some past experiences as success stories that help them to know, like, okay, A, mom is human, and B, she was able to be successful. Number 3, we ask questions so they can start to take ownership and some buy-in to that. We use structure, remember, routines and rhythms to calm uncertainty and to help them to know what to expect and the unexpected. We add in those comfort anchors, like, a heart on the hand or a happy note, to remind them that they're not doing this alone. We are there to reassure them. We practice and we role play to help them to feel confident as they go out and build those skills. And then we celebrate when they are able to flex their fear muscle, to reinforce courage. And finally, we communicate empowerment to leave them with belief that they have what it takes. We start with safety, we move to validation, to empowerment, to stability, give them the tools and reinforcement they need to believe that they can. We're not just helping kids survive the first day of school, we're raising future adults who can walk into the unknown, navigate challenges, and trust themselves to find a way through, even if we aren't there with them. I hope this was an encouragement to you today. I have lots of resources in the show notes, from books I love to read as they go back to school that open up the conversation about this, to the daily affirmations that you can write on our happy notes to remind them that you are there with them and that you see their progress. But above all, moms, I hope that you feel empowered to have some of these conversations. And if you don't, the other day when I was having that conversation with my child, I took a pause and I sent up a quick prayer and I said, God, give me wisdom. Give me wisdom to know what to say to my kids when they need it. Because as much as I want, right? Like, I'm getting emotional because as much as I want to take the hard away from our kids, I know that this is going to build the resilience that they need to carry on, not just into childhood, but into adulthood. And what a privilege it is that we get to walk alongside them and hold their hands and cheer them on every step of the way. So I'm wishing you all the best as you head back to school. I pray that this is an encouragement to you as you navigate these emotions with your kids. And I will see you right back here next week as we talk about back to school rhythms and how to build that in so we can continue to help kids feel secure in the unknown. Talk to you next week. Remember, take one tiny tweak away, and I hope that this simplifies your life and encourages you and makes it a little bit easier and lighter as you head back to school. If you liked this episode, it would mean so much if you'd share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review so others can find our show. Until next time, you can find me at Simple Purposeful Living on Instagram and Facebook.